Hey, what's up? Tim Cant here, and in this video we're going to be looking at the dark side of hardcore and jungle. We're not going to be getting too technical, we're mainly going to be listening to some tunes to hear the development of the sound, and yes, there is an accompanying playlist of all the tunes mentioned in the video in the description, where you can also find links to my various goods and services. So, without further ado, let's get cooking. Hardcore has always had a dark side, and this darkness can be heard in its precursor genres such as Belgian techno and new beat, and UK hardcore hip hop. New beat took influence from new wave, industrial and 80s dance sounds, combining them into a darker, edgier form of synth pop. Harder edge Belgian electronic groups such as Front 242 were a big influence on The Prodigy, and you can hear a few new beat samples in early hardcore tunes, such as Nexus and Blowback sampling Acid Rock by Rhythm Device for Mofo's theme, and Alternate sampling Jar Jar LaBoom's Something Scary for their track Frequency. Inspired by the emerging sound of Detroit techno, new beats spawned Belgian techno in the late 80s, which took the sound in a more dance-influenced, less synth-pop-focused direction. Despite the US influence, Belgian techno had an edgy, ravey feel that separated it stylistically from the US techno of the time. By the early 90s, Belgian techno gave us tracks such as Brazil's Spectrum, Frank de Wolf's Moribund, and Modular Expansion, also Frank de Wolf's Cubes. You can hear these three tracks sampled on dozens, if not hundreds of hardcore tunes, including material by The House Crew, NRG, Cubase, DJ Seduction, Blame, The Prodigy, The Hypnotist, and plenty more. That's just the tip of the iceberg, and there are huge numbers of Belgian techno tracks played by UK DJs and sampled by UK artists, so it's hard to overstate the influence Belgian techno had on UK hardcore. While Belgian techno gave UK hardcore its sinister synth edge, it's UK hip-hop where you can hear the roots of the dark breakbeat sound. Many of the UK Britcore tracks from the late 80s that are regarded as classics are dark and moody, to put it mildly. Let's take, for example, Silver Bullet's 20 Seconds to Comply from 1989. Up-tempo breakbeats, movie samples, sinister chanting, a lot of the Darkside tropes are here, and the new sampling hardware of the late 80s is clearly being used to full effect. Other tracks from around this time, like First Frontal Assault, hits from Small Arms Fire, and Depth Charge's Depth Charge, also took a more is more approach to movie sampling.
Hits from Small Arms Fire. Hits from Small Arms Fire. Hits from Small Arms Fire.
I will die after you. I'll see to that. Oh, crazy.
Along with the cinematic atmospherics, British hip-hop could be subversive. For example, Hijack put out a track called Hijack the Terrorist Group on their The Horns of Jericho album in 1991, and Talking Loud signed the Marxist hip-hop group Marksman in the early 90s too. Tracks like Rebel MC's Richer Getting Richer and The House Crew's All We Want to Do Is Dance directly called out economic inequality and tabloid propaganda.
Many poor, but they can't get more. Divide and rule was a tactic. In the West End, you spend but don't lend. Ready to receive but never give to a friend.
Unacceptable, say the media. While the tabloid press is getting seedier. The chancellor, he's getting greedier. The lower class has never been needier.
Britpop had a rebellious, positive message, and the utopic heyday of rave was just around the corner. Post-1988's Acid House Summer of Love, various musical styles including hip-hop, techno and house began to coalesce into what would become known as hardcore. It's possible to hear some serious darkness in the nascent breakbeat hardcore sound of the late 80s and early 90s in tracks such as The Black Dogs' Virtual from 1989, and Four Heroes' Mr. Kirk's Nightmare and The Scientist's Exorcist from 1990.
Send them
by 1991 hardcore rave was increasing rapidly in popularity and crossing over into the mainstream, and by this point Belgian techno and UK hip-hop were becoming subsumed by the emerging breakbeat hardcore sound. You can hear the influence of both Belgian techno and hardcore hip-hop in tracks such as Zero B's Module from 1991, which features dark atmospheric synth sounds accompanied by heavy breakbeats and incessant techno kick drums. Let's check out some other nuggets from 91. How about the Prodigy's pre-Charlie, What Evil Lurks?
Hold the beat, stop the beat, drop the beat.
And here's another release on 4 Heroes Reinforced Records, Nebula 2's Athiyama. Soundcore's Dreamfinder is another pioneering early Darkside track. The original release of Egyptian Empire's Horn track came out in 1991, and it's an ahead-of-its-time jungleistic breakbeat fest. Asen's Close Your Eyes, Optic Confusion combined dark ravey atmospheres with Jim Morrison and Beatles samples to create a moment of dark magnificence.
Here comes the sun, and I say it's alright.
Time Bass and Chromosomes Unity is an early, almost reverse bass style track that was memorably sampled at the end of the decade by DJ Luck and MC Neat for their garage anthem With a Little Bit of Luck.
Unity is going to be the key to our success.
An early track by hard trance legend Chucky, Mark I, Hoovers and Spray Cans is another sinister slice of hardcore, which has a more uplifting pad section that provides respite from the bleakness. Lenny Dice's We Are IE is arguably the standard bearer of early dark jungle sounds from this era, with its energetic breaks and Pet Shop Boys pad sample.
Let me hear you scream. Let me hear you scream.
GEE's Fire When Ready is another early dark anthem which features pioneering use of time-stretched vocals. Finally, Messiah's 20,000 Hardcore Members is a synth-heavy techno banger with some entertaining movie samples from The Warriors and Life of Brian. So, Darkside was always a big part of the hardcore rave sound, though you might not have appreciated that unless you were involved in the scene at the time. To the casual observer, it might have appeared that the rave scene was dominated by so-called Toy Town techno and house sampling piano anthems. Indeed, by 1992, rave had become a cultural phenomenon in the UK, with feel-good anthems like SL2's On a Raggatip, Smarties' Sesame Street, and Liquid's Sweet Harmony doing the business both in the charts and at raves. The hardcore vibe was broadly utopian, and the implied message of hardcore was, let's all be nice to each other and dance messily in a field. However, by the end of 1992, the happy rave vibe began to fall out of favour with hardcore tastemakers. Perhaps they had had enough of the accessible rave sound, or were enthralled by the innovative sounds of artists such as Jack Smooth, Edge of Darkness, and Roughage Crew. Roughage Crew's Terminator is widely considered to be the decisive moment where the hardcore zeitgeist became irrevocably drawn to the dark side. But first, let's consider Roughage Crew's previous Darkrider EP. Yes, the Darkrider EP is indeed dark, but it's got some full-on rave moments in there. Take, for example, Believe, which kicks off with a chipmunk vocal and a piano intro sampled from Mimo Mix featuring Valerie Etienne's Italo house banger, All Your Love. However, rather than going into a hands-in-the-air, uplifting rave anthem, it drops straight into an expectation-subverting, sinister drum and bass affair.
Just give a chance to my heart with my love. Call me sometimes. Just give a chance to my heart. Believe me, baby. Believe me, baby.
Believe isn't the only Darkside track to sample All Your Love either. Here's Strings of Darkness from Darkman's As Dark As It Gets EP. A DJ SS&EQ co-production, you might be forgiven for thinking you've been bait and switched when the Mimo Mix pianos drop, and you're given a decent chunk of uplifting rave action before the eponymous Strings of Darkness kick in. What's common to both these tracks is that they abruptly switch up from uplifting piano rave into the dark side. Dare I suggest they're a little bit like microcosms of what happened to the rave scene as a whole. Released under the Metalheads alias in late '92, Terminator was a step on from the Darkside EP, with futuristic atmospherics and abstract process sounds that, while retaining rave's energy, pared back the ravey stabs and focused on breakbeat processing, unsettling sounds and ominous movie samples. It was a massive tune, and it had an influence on the scene that resonates to this day.
Terminator is out there.
Post the arrival of Terminator, Judgment Day if you will, rave's dark future seemed like fait accompli. Let's take, for example, the Suburban Bass discography. In summer and late '92, they were putting out tons of radio-friendly uplifting rave bangers like Rachel Wallace's Tell Me Why and Sons of a Loop-de-Loop era's Peace and Loveism. However, by the time Sub-Bass 20 rolls around in early '93, we see a profound change in direction with DJ Hype's upsetting Shot in the Dark.
What's criminal?
Process breaks, hip-hop and soundclash samples, scratch techno noises. This was a far cry from the Suburban Bass output of just a few months earlier. Similar things happened with other labels too. Moving Shadow went from the piano antics of Blame's Feel the Energy and Cosmo and Dib's Exaltation to Two Bad Mice's Underworld EP, which features remixes from, funnily enough, Roughage Crew and DJ Hype. Here's a little bit of DJ Hype's remix of Underworld.
You're walking someplace and it's
Yes, it's very dark. Again, Moving Shadow went from pianos to hellish vibes without missing a beat. How about Production House? Yes, again we go from pianos with Asen's practically symphonic Trip to the Moon Part 3 and Baby D's anthemic Let Me Be Your Fantasy, segueing into DMS's grimy SOS and DJ Solo's appropriately named Darkage. The hardcore scene seemed keen to take itself yet further underground and distance itself from the now ubiquitous happy rave sound. By mid-1993, the uplifting energy of hardcore rave had broadly been replaced by the new zeitgeist of Darkside. While Britpop had an angry but ultimately positive message and hardcore leaned utopian, Darkside's vibe was pure nihilism. Here is an example, is a little of Boogie Time Tribe's Ultramagnetic MCs sampling Real Hardcore Part 1.
you see the dark shadow, you are living hell.
The vibes are dark, sure, but I would posit that what really defines Darkside isn't its dark aesthetic, but rather a desire to push the music forward. The Darkside was a place where experimentation could flourish. Two of the most influential early Darkside tracks, Terminator and Four Heroes' Journey from the Light, explored early time stretching and pitch shifting technology to process breaks in exciting new ways. Journey from the Light used Akai time stretching capabilities on an Ike Turner funky mule break beat to create versions of the sample at ascending pitches, creating rich new textures that would be enormously influential to the Darkside sound. Terminator used the funky drummer-based Wishing on a Star break by Fresh 4 run through the real-time pitch shifting capability of an Eventide H3000 Ultra Harmonizer to create a unique gliding pitch effect.
You're talking about things that I haven't done yet.
Another great example of breakbeat processing is DeCruz's Want You Now DJ SS&EQ remix, which features what, to me, sounds like a chopped and sequence break that's pitch bent up and down without time stretching. As mentioned previously, DJ Hype used scratched techno synths to great effect in Shot in the Dark, and this technique can also be heard on his track The Chopper using Belgian techno track Stylus Flight by Equitech. The Darkside is where we start to hear some of Jungle's staple stylistic tropes. For example, you can hear volume modulated bass sounds in DJ Hype's Shot in the Dark and The Trooper. Pitched breakbeat edits began to appear around this time, as heard in JMJ and Rich's Hall of Mirrors and DJ Mayhem's Ines. Time stretch vocals are another example. For example, you can hear a pitched up vocal with the characteristic Akai time stretch sound in 4Hero's Students of the Future Roughage Crew remix. Hardcore thrived on fast pace, often multi-layered breaks, but the Darkside began to see an increase in popularity of breaks that was still high tempo but had a slower, funkier feel. Examples of this include Subnation's Scotty, Doc Scott's Here Come the Drums remix, and Body Snatch's Euphony, aka Just For You London.
Scotty! Scotty! Scotty!
Another way in which hardcore producers of this era pushed the sound forward was to use a broader array of sound sources. We already heard Ace take on the Beatles, now here's Baby Kane sampling Simon & Garfunkel's The Sound of Silence for Hello Darkness.
Hello darkness, hello darkness, hello darkness.
4Hero sampled Don McLean's American Pie for their mysterious psychedelic The Elements, which comes on like a bad acid trip. The most important change in the sound of 1993 was the increased focus on having less cluttered mixes that put breaks at the front and centre. One of the best examples of this is Origin Unknown's Valley of the Shadows, aka Long Dark Tunnel, aka 31 Seconds.
31 seconds. 31 seconds.
Famously, Long Dark Tunnel used a lot of sounds from the first ever cover-mounted Future Music CD, which featured a bunch of demo tracks from some CD publishers AMG and Time and Space. Let's see where some of these sounds come from. Rather than rave stabs, Valley of the Shadows' musical centerpiece is an ascending Korg monopoly arpeggio riff from AMG's Old Gold Synth sample CD. The mix puts the think-based heavy D You Ain't Heard Nothing Yet break, via the ecstatic Goldmine 1 sample CD, to the forefront, and also used a downwards pitch shifting effect on its break to create a lo-fi shuffling effect too. The 31 seconds vocal sample is also taken from this CD via Ecstatic Goldmine and NASA.
T-minus 31 seconds, and we're gone for auto sequence start. T-minus 25 seconds. The sequencer on the orbiter now controlling the final seconds of the countdown. The body flap and speed brake are in launch position. T-minus 10 seconds.
These sounds are accompanied by a simple, sustained bass line, and the mix is defined and propulsive. Valley of the Shadows was a milestone release, and it was monumentally influential in hardcore's development into jungle and drum and bass. At this point, I'd like to demonstrate the sea change that was occurring around this time with some examples of remixes that I feel delineate dark hardcore with the new school of jungle D&B. First, we have Boogie Time Stripe, aka Keybase and DeCruise's Dark Stranger. The original version of this track feels very much like a hardcore tune with a mischievous, almost over-the-top feel and playful pitch-bending breaks. In the wake of the success of Valley of the Shadows, Dark Stranger was remixed by Origin Unknown, and this version is much more streamlined, with the relatively sparse arrangement giving the elements more room to breathe and sound loud in the mix. I've heard this version played out in contemporary D&B DJ sets, which is testament to the quality of its construction. Origin Unknown also remixed their own remix, creating Dark Stranger, the Origin Unknown remix, which is less well known than the original remix, but is still worth a listen. Another remix that I feel demonstrates hardcore's transformation into jungle D&B is the case of Hypron Experience's Lords of the Null Lines. I feel the original version of this track is very interesting. Its break is a light, snappy affair from Norman Cook's Skip to My Loop Psalm CD, and it's reminiscent of the work Hypron Experience member Alex Banks would do later as part of the jazzy Easy Rollers. In contrast, musically the track features a real grab bag of elements, including a variety of hyperactive bass sounds, horror soundtrack-esque synth lines, and an energetic techno-inspired Roland Alpha Juno riff. Like many 93 Moving Shadow releases, it was remixed by Foul Play to great success, and the Foul Play remix, like the Origin Unknown version of Dark Stranger, is streamlined, upfront sounding, and a real indicator of where the scene was heading. Funnily enough, Foul Play also remixed the track twice, the second time with DJ Randall, and this version is my favourite with its catchy, descending, warping bass line. Something Dark Stranger and Lords of the Null Lines had in common was sampling from movies, or at least an interview promoting a movie in the case of Dark Stranger.
I was fascinated by the myth of Dracula when I was a kid, the dark side of all human nature itself.
He comes to you in the night, the Dark Stranger.
Lords of the Null Lines heavily samples the, in my opinion, unfairly maligned Predator 2, and it was by no means the only Darkside track to do so. Another form of technological innovation that fueled the Darkside sound was the humble VHS player. Before videotape technology became ubiquitous in UK households in the 80s and early 90s, owning copies of movies wasn't something practical for most people. However, by the early 90s, you could buy or rent a huge variety of films in dedicated stores or high street shops. Combined with the relative affordability of sampling hardware, this gave producers the opportunity to snatch dialogue, music and sound effects from their fave films. In Darkside hardcore, this kind of unauthorised sampling was nothing less than rampant. Two of the most sampled movies in dark hardcore were Predator 2 and the Steven Seagal vehicle Marked for Death, both films featuring Jamaican gangsters, which was a thematic fit for the burgeoning jungle vibe. Marked for Death in particular was notable for kicking off the Johnny, Scotty, Ricky trend, started by Johnny Jungle's Johnny.
Johnny, help me!
This was followed up by Subnation's Scotty, which samples Sam Raimi's original The Evil Dead.
Cheryl was right. We're all gonna die here.
Then in 1994, Remark put out the Boys from the Hood sampling Ricky.
Ricky! Help me! Help me! Somebody help! Ricky! Help me!
This trend was parodied on a bonus track on Remix Record 6, though sadly this skit isn't available digitally at the time of making this video, and as I currently don't have access to a physical copy, I'm unable to provide a clip, but trust me, it was pretty funny. The 80s and early 90s was a golden age of action, horror and science fiction film, and I remember reading an interview with legendary producer Pete Parsons, aka Voyager, about how back in the day he often had Aliens or Predator on in the background in the studio. And sampling aside, I think the quality cinema of this era was really influential on the producers of the time. You can hear Darkside tune samples in an absolute ton of films from this era, including Aliens. Predator 1.
He's in the jungle. He just came alive and took him.
Predator 2. Robocop. Shut your mouth. All 3 Evil Dead films.
We're not gonna die. We're not gonna die. We're gonna get out of here.
Hello, lover.
Sam Raimi's other banger, Darkman.
Holographic recognition active.
The Shining.
Don't hurt me.
Candyman.
Yes? Who is that?
Roadhouse.
Nobody died.
And Rambo 2. Away from Hollywood, regulated movies like The Harder They Come, Babylon and Rockers were sampled in tunes which played a big part in developing the ragga jungle sound.
I say, man, song get mash up last night.
It mash up.
Island I know that all of you shall weakness the day as bad man shall fall.
Even family-friendly movies got in on the act, with Remark sampling Home Alone and DJ SS sampling both Disney's The Jungle Book and Warner Brothers' Looney Tunes.
This is it. Don't get scared now.
I'm the king of the swingers, ooh, the jungle VIP. I've reached the top and had to stop, and that's what's bothering me.
Everything is getting dark. Everything is getting dark.
How about some Mary Poppins courtesy of M-Beat? And what about this key-based sample of the new Scooby-Doo movies theme, presumably via Lord Finesse's You Know What I'm About? While we're on the subject of animation, how about Rebel MC's X Project sampling Aled Jones's Walking in the Air? I'm on a roll, so how about one more? We saw Joe's Darkman sampling R-Type earlier, but did you know that it also sampled the Sega Master System version of Darius 2, aka Sagaya? So, while Darkside might have lost rave's utopian vibes, it certainly didn't lose its sense of experimentation or playfulness. By the end of 1993, hardcore's evolution into what we think of today as jungle was nearly complete. Records like LTJ Bookham's Music and Omnitrio's Renegade Snares helped elevate hardcore to new levels of musical maturity, and intelligent anthems like Deep Blue's The Helicopter Tune and Engineers Without Fear's Spiritual Aura were bringing a more soulful feeling to the emerging jungle sound. I would argue that Renegade, aka Ray Keith's Terrorist, marks the beginning of the final evolution of Darkside into jungle. Here's a little bit of jungle trivia for you. I interviewed Rave for Future Music back in 2016, and he mentioned to me that the piano intro of Terrorist was directly inspired by the similar piano intro to the original version of Lords of the Null Lines. Incidentally, this Terrorist piano is a replayed version of New Waver's Japan's Night Porter. However, the rest of the tune is far removed from the earlier ravey dark sound, with its pioneering use of the respace, iconic jar shaka dub atmospherics, and stripped back mix that focuses on breakbeat chops above all else. It's dark for sure, but we're out of pitched down synth choir and horror movie sample territory here. It was around this time too that dancehall samples really became dominant as the flavour in the scene. You can hear the combination of dark and dancehall flavours in tracks like Louis Cypher's Heat from 1993, but by early 1994, more dancehall-centric tracks like Conquering Lion, aka Rebel MC's Code Red, and Leviticus, aka Jumping Jack Frost's Burial, were the new hotness.
Watch out! For the girls are sweet and unique. For the girl them with the sexy physique.
You can hear the dark side still present in jungle anthems like Dreadbass's Dead Dread and Remark R.I.P. DJ Hype remix, but the jump up jungle style had become the dominant force by this point. Another important stylistic development is the arrival of happy hardcore as a separate genre. In 1993, pioneering happy hardcore labels like Impact, Homegrown, Nightforce and Asylum were putting out as much dark material as happy stuff. For example, tracks like DJ Seduction's Really Dark, System AD Daringer Street, Lunacy Edge of Madness, and Vibes of Wish Doctor's Obsession. In my opinion, some of the most exciting dark records of early 1994 were from happy hardcore producers, tracks like DJ Demo's Corrosive Volume 1, Mystic and Fire's True Love remix, and Ramos Supreme and Sunset Regime Marley's Rush Happy Mix. However, past Dreamscape 11 or so, the happy side begins to clarify and become single-mindedly focused on uplifting sounds. Likewise in jungle drum and bass, by mid-1994, the dark side seemed for the most part consigned to history, with even labels like Ram and Metalheads exploring different sonic territory. However, by 1996, darkness was back in the form of tech step, a dimby genre that, to put it reductively, was more of an Event Horizon vibe than Darkside's Evil Dead feel. Genre mavens Ed Rush and Optical were Darkside veterans, having released tracks like Blood Clot, Art Attack and Clint a few years earlier, and even they couldn't resist sampling Predator 2 for their seminal Cut Slow, a Locust mix. Since Techstep, the Darkside has never really left D&B, and Darkside has also been influential outside of drum and bass. It's not hard to see the link between it and the hauntological sounds of Burial, for instance, the tortured mentasms of South London boroughs. Like a lot of forms of dance music, the lockdown era saw a Darkside revival with labels like Good To Go and 8205 reanimating the sound and putting out new and unreleased material from back in the day. So, the future of Darkside is looking pretty bright. If you're a newcomer to the sounds of hardcore and jungle and want to learn more about this type of music, the natural place is to start with mixes. Rave mixtapes are great time capsules of where the scene was at a particular time, not least because we have a record of exactly when each mix was recorded. For example, check out Grooverider at Amnesia House, Book of Love, 27th June 1992, to hear what is apparently the first time Terminator got dropped. If you prefer to listen to full tracks, then the era's compilation albums are a great way to introduce yourself to the sound. Darkside was well served by compilations, many of which I discuss in my video ranking the best 90s jungle compilation album art. The Jungle Techno, Hard Leaders and the Darkside series are all great for getting a feel of the dark sound. I recommend checking out Jungle Techno 2, Happiness and Darkness, as this gives you a feel for the split that was occurring in the happy and dark sounds of the time. Both Terminator and Valley of the Shadows appear on this release, which also features some more obscure tunes like Higher Octaves, Full Logic Control. Hard Leaders 3, Enter the Darkside, is a great collection of interesting Darkside tracks, with some tasty jungle techno in there, and a couple of more light-hearted tracks including Baby Kane's excellent Bagpipes in Effect.
Bagpipes in effect, let's go.
The Darkside, hardcore drum and bass style, is packed with innovative dark tunes like Doc Scott's Here Come the Drums, Edge of Darkness, Come Together, and Babylon Time Warp, aka Intense's Durban Poison. Illegal Pirate Radio 3 is another compilation that's split into happy and dark tracks and includes the seminal Key Project Champion Sound Alliance mix, Top Buzz's Living in Darkness, and Mad Dog's My God, a tune from early 1994 that showcases the pinnacle of slick, jungleistic Darkside production. Moving Shadow and Suburban Bass's The Joint LP is a gem, and as well as certified Darkside stormers like Real Hardcore, Laws of the Null Lines, and an exclusive Johnny Jungle remix of Hype's The Chopper, you also get some more euphoric and raved up vibes in the form of Omni Trio's Mystic Stepper and Chrome and Time's The Slammer.
We'll dedicate to our ganja man.
For the real heads, of course, you need to check out some of the classic Darkside labels on Discogs. Some labels with great 1993 output include Reinforced, Suburban Bass, Moving Shadow, Formation Records, Basement, Face Records, Scanner, Certificate 18, Dark Horse, Rugged Vinyl, FBD Project, Absolute 2, Soap Bar, Boogie Beats, and of course loads more. In the playlist I've included every track mentioned in the video, plus lots of my own faves at the end, so check it out if you'd like to hear more. Well, that was a lot of sinister fun. If you've enjoyed yourself, why not check out the links in the description to my various professional services and goodies that I offer. And yeah, why not like and subscribe? And until next time, I'll see you later.